powerful messenger. My dearly respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we thank and we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the will and the ability to be here on this beautiful and blessed Friday. Because there are thousands upon thousands of Muslims throughout the world who don't have these two qualities. Some have the will but don't have the ability to make it to the masjid for Jum'ah Salah. And others have the ability but don't have the will to make it to the masjid for Jum'ah Salah. So we thank and we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us both the will and the ability to be here in the masjid on this beautiful and blessed Friday. Today's khutbah will focus on the balanced approach to purification. And in doing so, we want to cover two aspects or two elements of purification. The first are qualities that pertain to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or ruhaniyya. And the second is the qualities that pertain to our relationship with our fellow humankind, or akhlaqiyya. And inshallah, there's 10 characteristics that cover this entire aspect of purification, or fiqh of tazkiyah, purification through success. But inshallah, due to time constraints, we will only cover 3. And inshallah, if time doesn't permit that, then we'll only cover 2. But I want to let you know the 10, because this is something we should all focus on. This is something we should all know. This is something we should all strive and learn for. The first is hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-raja. The second is reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-tawakkul. The third is having higher aspirations, al-himma. Followed by that is patience, as-sabr. After that, the fifth one is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-dhikr. The sixth one is gratitude, ash-shukr. And then comes al-zuhd, ascetism. After that, rahmah, or compassion. The ninth one is humility, al-tawaddu. And last but not least is excellence, al-ihsan. Today, inshallah, my dear brothers and sisters, with an introduction into fiqh of tazkiyah, purification through success, we will cover, inshallah, 3 of the 10 characteristics. And all 3 are entwined with one another. All 3 lead to another. All 3 of them, 1 builds to 2, and 2 builds to 3, 3 builds to 4, all the way till we reach excellence, al-ihsan. The need for purification of the soul and the heart is vital and ever constant. If you've ever taken a physics class or a chemistry class, you talk about the changing constant, the constant change. Purification of the soul is that constant change. Our iman is a constant change. It's not something that is stamped on us when we are born. When we are born, we don't get a stamp that says this person will have 10% or 20% or 100% or 98 or 97 and so on and so forth. No, this is a constant change. There are ups and there are downs. Our iman level can get to such a point where it's as low and as small as a mustard seed, very tiny. Or it can be as grand and as huge as Mount Everest. It's humongous. And at the same time, the purification of our soul is the same. The purification of our soul can be a process that is ever constant. We can start that process with our purification being as small as a mustard seed, and we can end that process with being as big as Mount Everest. But the thing we have to understand is that it is ever constant. It is a constant change. It is something that is a challenge for each and every one of us till the day we return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Till that final soul, the final little soul that leaves our body, until that breath, that final breath, this is going to be a challenge for us. This is going to be the challenge that we have to overcome. This is going to be that challenge that we have to prove to ourselves day in and night out, and constantly have to strive for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of the importance and the imperative of this process in 2 powerful verses. In Surah Ash-Shams, verse 9 and 10, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. To a happy state shall indeed attain he who causes his self to grow in purity. and truly lost is he who buries it in darkness. Tazkiyah, or purification, my dear brothers and sisters, of the self is concerned with the spirit or the feeling. It has to do with our inner self. And it has to do with the spirit and feeling of our heart. As a believer worships and connects to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in order to really connect down to oneself, it's a process that only you can do. Growing up as young adults and as part of the youth that I consider myself, my parents were constantly there and striving and pushing me to become a better person, to be pure. They were the ones who were accelerating me towards purification. But one thing that they didn't realize is that it has to do with oneself. No matter how much pressure you get from the outside world, you're responsible for yourself at the end run. When it comes down to the day of judgment, you're going to be standing there alone. No one else will be standing with you. You'll be standing there. Everyone will have forgotten you. And that question to yourself now is, did I do the best that I was supposed to do? Was my heart pure in my time in this dunya? And so that way, we have to carry on, and we have to have this as a constant challenge for ourselves. Covering the first quality, hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-raja. We really have to realize that in this stressful world, full of global turmoil as well as personal strife, it becomes increasingly difficult to remain hopeful. Just yesterday and just the day before, just this month, this past year, all the calamities, all the hardships, all the suffering that not only we personally went through in our own personal lives, but the Muslim Ummah went through. It is amazing, and it is a mercy and a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are still here. There are people who are striving day after day against us, but we are still here. Alhamdulillah. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are still here. So now we have that hope. Let that be that small glimpse of hope. Let that be that small glimpse of hope that everyone is fighting against you. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still has you here. Still is keeping you fighting. So have that raja. Have that hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only when we realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners and that we must never despair can we comprehend what it means to be hopeful in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. To be balanced in our approach is imperative, my dear brothers and sisters. Having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can lead to two major extremes. It's one on either end of the spectrum. So it is very important that we have a balanced life. One extreme is to take Allah's mercy for granted and assume He will forgive you of all your shortcomings. And in return, the believer becomes lax in his or her worship and lowers his or her guard against sinning. We see this daily. It is sad and it is depressing that we see this daily. We see people that are so hopeful and so have reached that extreme where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive me. Allah will forgive me. I know He will forgive me, but I'm going to continue sinning. I'm going to continue doing this wrong. I'm going to continue lying. I'm going to continue having those relationships I'm not supposed to have. I'm going to continue disrespecting parents. I'm going to continue being unjust to those who are listening to me. In a leadership position, taking advantage of your leadership. In that communal position, taking advantage of your role in that community. And saying that you're big and macho when you're not really. When your role is very minimal or minuscule. That is that extreme. That you are so lax that you do whatever you want, knowing and assuming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. And the other extreme is where you become so fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not forgiving you that we despair in Allah's mercy. We despair in His mercy. We are so afraid of everything. We are so afraid that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to forgive us that we become solid. We stay in a small box and we don't go out of it. We don't strive for greatness. We don't strive for al-himma. We don't even have tawakkul, reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't even have excellence. That is where we are. That is depressing. That is sad, and that is the truth of most of our ummah. That we are so afraid of what would happen if we went outside of our box that we stay within our box. We don't even step one foot out. We don't even taste the waters of outside because that's how afraid we are. Right now in the Muslim community, this is major, this is key. Our Muslim communities are so afraid of what will happen in the next coming days or months or years or whatever, that we're afraid of standing up and standing for what is right and what is true. Linda Sarsour, a political activist, says something that is true and something that really must hit you deep and hard, and that is that you need to be unapologetically Muslim. This is the best moment to be unapologetically Muslim. This is the moment where you have to understand that nothing matters, nobody matters, you do you. Because everyone outside doesn't know what a true Muslim is. Everyone that is not in the masajids today, every single person that is outside and looking in doesn't know what it means to be a true Muslim. We do. So it is time for us to stand up and get outside of our boxes. Time for us to display and be the Muslims. Be unapologetically Muslim in every community. Whether we're dealing with people at the outside or whether we're dealing with internal issues. Whether we're dealing with non-Muslims or whether we're dealing with Muslims. It is the perfect time to be unapologetically Muslim. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we move on from this mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really has this beautiful quality, and we have to take advantage of this quality. We have to take advantage of this quality, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set out a plan for us. He has set out such a good plan for us that we can't even tell what it is. We are ants crawling on this carpet. Imagine if you were at this moment an ant crawling on this carpet. Would you be able to tell this beautiful design that the carpet has? No, you wouldn't. You would complain about the rough turns and the rough edges and the ups and the downs, but you would not even know about the beauty behind this. As we move on, we're moving on to tawakkul, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this has to do with us. We have to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time, we need to plan and we need to execute to our best ability and then leave the whole situation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, there are hardships. Yes, there is pain. Yes, there is suffering. Yes, there is grief. Yes, there is sadness. But there is goodness in every hardship. There is goodness in everything that we go through. It is good for us, whether we know it or not. Whether we see it or not, it is good for us. And that is tawakkul. Tawakkul is actually something that a lot of people mistake. And they get to a point where they reach two extremes. Again, there's either laziness, which is tawakkul, laziness. We become so lazy that we fail to plan, or even worse, choose not to take the steps towards success with a false hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of everything. The best example for this, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, is that brother or sister who's sitting at home when they should be going to school or work, and they're sitting laid back on the couch and they're saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for me. I rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 100%. He's gonna give me what I need. He will give me what I need. He already wrote it down. I'm going to get it. That's it. It's wrong. They are wrong. You have to put in that effort. You have to put in that time. You cannot be lazy. You have to put in some effort in order to achieve that goal, in order to get anything. Obviously, if you put in effort, you study. I'm going to use an example of a student. A student studies super hard for an exam that they're about to take. They study nights and days and days and nights, but at the end they still fail. That was Allah's plan. The same student goes back, since they failed that first test, they're like, man, Allah already knows whether I'm going to pass or I'm going to fail, so forget about it. I don't need to study. If I'm going to pass, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make me remember those answers on the day of the test. If I'm going to fail no matter what. That's what a lot of people are doing. And that's wrong. That's an extreme of laziness, where you're so lazy that you don't even care about putting any effort in. And the other extreme is over-reliance on ourselves and on others. The other extreme is planning and taking action with the belief that the outcome must turn out in the direction related to that effort or the amount of effort put forth. And the best example for this is when one of our brothers and sisters apply for a job. When you get out of college, this is the most difficult time for every single person. You're trying to get a job, and you don't get that job. You just fall into this deep level of depression. You delve into the what ifs. What if I did this? What if I said this during my interview? What if I put this word instead of that word? You delve into this and you become so depressed and so saddened that you don't even take care of your own deeds. You don't even remember that this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan overall, and this job wasn't meant for me. I wasn't meant to drive a Mercedes. I was meant to drive a Camry. I wasn't meant to be a CFO, a chief financial officer. I was meant to be just a regular accountant. I wasn't meant to run the organization, but be an ant or be the worker in the organization. That's where we really have to focus. That tawakkul is that reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's really believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, putting forth that effort, putting your first foot down. My dear brothers and sisters, when you put your effort in, you achieve greatness. When you put your effort in, you achieve greatness. When you put that effort in constantly, you're trying to achieve higher goals. You're trying to aspire for higher goals. You are reaching higher aspirations and higher vigor. So as we go on this break, ending off with this one statement, if you really want to aspire for higher goals, then think about how to make yourself great again. How do you make yourself great again? أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفره إنه غفور رحيم. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. My dearly respected brothers and sisters in Islam, we are covering a topic that is very important. It is a topic that sadly we cannot complete today, but it's a topic that is beautiful to start at the beginning of the year. We're talking about fiqh of tazkiyah, purification through success. We're covering 3 of the 10 characteristics of a balanced believer. And the first that we covered was hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-raja. The second that we covered was reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-tawakkul. And last but not least, we want to cover al-himma, or higher aspirations or vigor. The conscientious Muslim should have higher vigor, which naturally pushes him or her to set his or her sights on accomplishing big goals, which include personal, which include the communal goals, and the societal goals. Having himma makes one value every second of one's time, work towards high-level goals in our everyday lives, and remain conscientious of one's progress and growth. My dearly respected brothers and sisters in Islam, the believer takes heed. A person who has al-himma, a person who has higher aspirations, who truly believes in higher aspirations, really holds these key words to his heart. Where the Prophet ﷺ said, take advantage of 5 matters before 5 other matters. Your youth before you become old, your health before you become fit, before you fall sick, your wealth before you become poor, your free time before you become preoccupied, and your life before your death. My dear brothers and sisters, we have to take advantage of our time. We have to aspire and try to achieve higher goals. We have to make ourselves great again. And in order to achieve that, it has to do with oneself. you have to deal with yourself. You have to ask yourself on a daily basis, am I doing something that will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Am I doing something that will bring about goodness in this world? Am I doing something that will bring about higher goals for myself? Am I doing something that will bring about growth and exponential growth and spirituality, exponential spirituality in myself? Is that something that I am doing or is it not? Because if I am not doing that, then I need to get my act together now. Because as many of you know, our time on this world is limited. It is not infinite. This is the dunya, this is not the akhirah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises us ease and happiness and joy and anything you can imagine 7 to 10,000 times past that. Imagine Al-Jannah now, it is better than that. Allah promised us that in Al-Akhirah. But this world, this dunya, this time, this now, this is the time that we are being tested. This is a time where we are going through challenges. This is the time where we are being asked to go about this difficult life. And the question is, are you up to that challenge or are you not? The question is, can you handle this challenge or can you not? And if you can't handle it, then what steps do you need to take in order to achieve your challenge? In order to make sure that you succeed in this challenge? Because no matter what, as I began this khutbah, this challenge is ever going. It will last until your very last breath. So my dear brothers and sisters, are you trying to achieve higher goals or are you trying to do the bare minimum? Are you trying to pass this world and just do your 5 pillars and that's it? Or are you trying to do more throughout your life? Are you trying to do more throughout your world? What is it that you are trying to achieve? Ask yourselves this on every single morning. Ask yourself every single night if you achieved that. If you achieved what you set out to achieve. Because that's the reality of it. We don't set goals for ourselves. We just live our lives as if it's every other day is a brand new day. We don't think about what we did yesterday and how it's going to affect tomorrow. We don't think about how our present time, what we are doing as the Muslims of 2017 is going to affect our kids and our kids' kids and generations on to come. My dear brothers and sisters, if it wasn't for the Prophet ﷺ, if it wasn't for the Sahaba, we would not be here. Islam would not have gotten here. If they didn't strive and aspire for higher goals, if they didn't go outside of their box and travel to distant lands, Islam would have never reached here in the United States of America. Islam would have never reached Malaysia if it wasn't for businessmen who literally, the only reason that the entire community of Malaysia, the entire population accepted Islam, the only community to entirely accept Islam was because of 3 businessmen who went there, and not because they went there to share Islam, not because they went there for dawah efforts, they went there to do business. And everyone saw how good their character was, their skills, how modest they were, their akhlaq, their deen, and everyone wanted that. And we're here. We're in the United States of America. We're in the land of opportunity. And we're still far behind what they were multiple generations ago. It is sad. It is depressing. How many of us in here are trying to be as-sabiqun as-sabiqun? How many of us here are trying to be ashab al-yameen? How many of us here are trying to reach Jannat al-Firdaus? All of us should raise our hands. But in reality, none of us are taking the steps to actually get there. None of us are evaluating ourselves and seeing if we're actually taking the proper steps to get there. And that is sad. And again, this is first to myself. None of us, myself included, we are not taking those proper steps. My dear brothers and sisters,